My name is Valerie Thomas Njie. I'm one of the Thomases that grew up in Homestead in the 50s and 60s, one of 7. In addition to all the ones my dad always brought back from vacation with him. But it was a pretty exciting experience for us. The way we were brought up was somewhat different than most of my friends. Most of the families had 7, 9, 10, whatever. Our family included the children, my mother and father, and my grandmother, who lived about a block away, but who spent every single day after work at our home. My dad never wanted to go into the steel mills, like most people who lived in Homestead. And so he did everything that he could. He was born in 1926 in Homestead, and in 1932, his mother passed. His grandmother and father raised him, and when they tore down a lot of the ward where my dad was living to expand the steel mill, they moved over to Bedford Avenue in Pittsburgh. For my dad, I think that was very lucky for him, because he went to Conley and learned photography. He was truly an entrepreneur. He did anything and everything to be able to raise his children. He did floral design. We even had a dark room in our home. And in 1951, he really hit it lucky, because TVs were just coming out. He and 2 guys from Braddock opened up a repair shop. And I remember trying to figure out, long after my dad died, where did he learn TV repair? Did he learn it at Conley or what? And I was told that he was the businessman, the brains behind the operation. The other 2 guys knew how to repair. He knew how to operate a business. And that took him up until about probably 1958, 59, when he branched out on his own and opened up Wham TV. That stood for Walter and Marion, my parents. It's a coincidence that Whammo was in Homestead at that time also, but my dad changed his name maybe just a month or so before Whammo. So you had Wham and Whammo. Growing up, we had to work very hard. While everyone else was out playing, going to skating parties, we had to work down in my dad's shop every single day. I also sold couriers. I was the courier girl in Homestead from the 3rd grade all the way to a week before I got accepted into the University of Pittsburgh in 1968 after graduating. So my dad really believed in a strong work ethic. So did my grandmother. With both of them, there was only one way to do it, and that was the right way. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and that's why I am that way today. My dad was honored a few years ago by Park Place Church, and so I started looking into what was he known for. I just knew him as the TV man, the man who sold appliances and expanded to furniture and rugs and things like that. But what I found out was that he was known and he was so successful because Black folks couldn't get loans. They couldn't get credit back in the 60s when he became so successful. And so even as recent as yesterday, I met someone at a luncheon and they said, "Oh yeah, Wham, that's your dad. That's where I got my credit." He would take individuals like newlyweds to buy furniture. They couldn't do it otherwise. Of course, they'd have to pay for it, but that's the only way. That was their gateway to credit. So he is really known for that. He passed very young. He was 50 years old when he passed, but he really had left an indelible legacy. I think people were always surprised at my demeanor and the way I led by example. And it was, I think, because of the way that my parents raised us. And I'm very, very involved in the community, and I know that I would not be where I am today had it not been for the women in the church, the people at the community center, the folks I delivered couriers to, because Homestead back in the 60s when I went to high school, they weren't even trying to help Black people go to college. They just weren't. But it was the community that always encouraged me, always made me think that I was bigger than life, more beautiful than I was. more exceptional, a good speaker. I learned to speak in the church. I didn't learn to speak at Homestead High School. So it's just very unfortunate that our communities, at least the communities that I have chosen to live in, are not the way they were before, where everything was in the community. We never had to leave Homestead. We had our movie theaters, we had 3, 5, and 10s, we had the churches, we had everything. Everything was just blocks away. He was only 50 years old when he died, and he was very successful, and it was a loss to the community when he passed, but by then, things had started relaxing. And probably if he were still alive today, I'm not sure he'd have business, because today you have so many places. But back then, that wasn't a possibility. Not only with blacks, but people who were poor. They didn't have access to credit. And so they first closed the one in Hazelwood, closed the one in Homestead, and when my brothers and cousin did not want to continue the business because they were doing other things, my mother just closed it, and it never reopened. My mother and sister remained there until maybe about 27 years ago, when Homestead started getting bad, and a lot of guns and crime right around where we were living. That's when they moved into Pittsburgh. But the building still stands.